I always thought the weirdest thing I'd ever encounter on my delivery route would be a dog chasing my van or an awkward doorstep conversation. But that was before I took a seasonal job in a remote New England town I'd never heard of. Ashwood, population 823. At first glance, Ashwood looked like any other sleepy town nestled in the forested hills of northern Maine. The roads were quiet, the houses were old but well kept, and there was a kind of eerie calm that hung in the air like fog. I thought I'd landed the easiest job ever. A few packages, some peaceful drives, and plenty of time to myself. I was wrong. The first sign that Ashwood wasn't normal came before I even stepped foot in it. My GPS kept rerouting me, like the town didn't want to be found. Every time I got close, the directions would glitch, spin me in circles, or freeze completely. It wasn't until I asked a gas station clerk 30 miles out that I finally got a handwritten map with cryptic directions. Follow the creek till the trees thin out. If you pass the wooden scarecrow, you've gone too far. That should have been enough for me to turn around, but curiosity outweighed caution. I arrived just past dawn. A thin fog blanketed the cracked pavement of the only road leading into town. My delivery van creaked over uneven ground as I passed a row of colonial-era houses with shutters closed tight, as if the town were holding its breath. No birds, no dogs, just the sound of my tires crunching gravel. The distribution center had warned me. Ashwood only receives deliveries once a week. The route had been ignored for months because the last driver quit suddenly. No explanation, just never showed up again. The drop list was short, only 6 addresses. One of them, curiously, was listed with no name, just resident, and a number scratched in black ink. 27 Ash Hollow Lane. I figured I'd start easy, so I headed to the first address, 14 Brecker Street. It was a quaint, ivy-draped house with a white picket fence and a small porch. A woman in her 70s stood at the doorway before I even parked. She didn't smile. "You're new," she said. Her voice was dry, brittle. I nodded, stepping out of the van with the small package in hand. "First time in Ashwood?" she asked, not reaching for the parcel. "Yes, ma'am. Just helping out for the holidays. Quiet little town." I smiled, trying to keep it light. She didn't laugh. She didn't blink. "Don't believe everything you see," she said, then took the package and retreated inside, locking the door behind her with 3 distinct clicks. That was the first delivery. The second was uneventful. An elderly man waved from his window but didn't come out. I left the box on the porch. No big deal. But by the third, I noticed something strange. Every house had its curtains drawn. Every person I saw stood perfectly still, staring out their windows as if watching something just beyond the edge of the trees. The air grew colder, even though the sun had risen fully by now. The fourth address, 9 Weaver's Court, wasn't even marked on my map. I found it by accident. A small, dilapidated house at the edge of town, half swallowed by overgrown vines. I knocked 3 times. No one answered, but I felt like I was being watched. The door creaked open a few inches on its own. I froze. "Hello? Delivery for Mr. Lewin?" I called. No answer. I set the box on the porch, quickly stepped back, and turned to leave. As I did, I swear I heard the sound of someone whispering my name from inside. Not shouting, not calling, whispering. When I got back to the van, my hands were shaking. I tried to laugh it off, telling myself the house was just old, and maybe someone had a radio on inside. Maybe. But I couldn't ignore how the woods looked darker now, like the tree line was inching closer to the road. The 5th stop brought some relief, an actual human interaction with a young woman in her 20s named Ellie. She opened the door before I even knocked, smiling nervously. "You must be the replacement," she said. "For the delivery guy?" "Yeah. Just filling in for the season." She stepped outside, closing the door gently behind her. "Don't go to 27 Ash Hollow," she said quietly. I blinked. "What?" "Last driver. I saw him go there. No one's seen him since." I tried to ask more, but she shook her head. "They won't like it if I talk too long. They watch us." "Who?" She didn't answer. She just backed away and disappeared inside her house, pulling the shades shut with trembling hands. By this point, My gut was telling me to dump the last package and leave. But something else, a mix of stupidity and curiosity, pushed me forward. 27 Ash Hollow Lane was the only house at the end of a narrow dirt road. No other homes nearby, no cars, just forest and silence. The mailbox was rusted and unreadable, but the numbers were carved into the bark of an old pine tree nearby. I pulled up slowly, squinting through the windshield. The house looked abandoned. The shutters were rotted, the roof caved in on one side. And yet, there was smoke coming from the chimney. The package in the back of the van had no label, no name, just a hand-scrawled note taped to it. Deliver only at sunset. But it was only 11 a.m. I checked my phone. No signal. The forest around the house felt like it was breathing, pulling the air in and out in slow, rhythmic pulses. I sat in the van for a while, watching the smoke twist into the sky. Then I noticed something that made my blood run cold. The same delivery van I was driving, same model, same company logo, was half buried behind the trees off to the left of the house. Ivy had overtaken it. The windows were shattered. And inside, slumped over the wheel, was a figure wearing the same uniform I had on. The last driver never left. I put the van in reverse, heart pounding, but the wheels spun uselessly in place. I was stuck. That's when I heard it. A knock, not on my van. On the window beside me. Someone or something was standing outside just beyond the glass. Its face was hidden in shadow, but its hand was gray and too long, with fingers that tapped in slow, deliberate rhythm. They say curiosity killed the cat. But what they don't tell you is what happens after the cat comes back and remembers everything it saw. I wish I had driven away from Ashwood the moment my GPS glitched. I wish I'd called in sick. I wish I'd listened when Ellie told me to stay away from 27 Ash Hollow Lane. But I didn't. And now, as I sat frozen in the driver's seat of a stuck delivery van, staring at the pale, elongated hand tapping my window, I realized something bone deep. Ashwood didn't want me here. It wanted me to stay. I couldn't look at the thing's face. It was hidden by the glare on the glass, but the hand was all I needed to see. The skin was dry, cracked like old bark. The fingers were too long, like they'd grown extra joints just to make the tapping more deliberate. Tap, tap, tap. I blinked, then turned my head slowly. Nothing. The window was empty. Was it ever there? I shook off the panic, trying to rationalize. Maybe it was a tree branch. Maybe I imagined it. Stress, exhaustion. I'd been driving for hours, delivering in an unfamiliar town. It was probably nothing. Then I looked down at the window. 3 faint smudges marked where fingers had pressed against the glass. Not a branch. I needed to leave. Now, I jumped out of the van and checked the tires. The back left one was half buried in the soft mud. My heart sank. I grabbed the floor mat from the passenger side and wedged it under the wheel, praying it would give me enough grip. I ran back to the driver's seat, turned the key, and paused. The package. It was still in the back, labeled, "Deliver only at sunset." I should have left it. I should have floored the gas and never looked back. But instead, I opened the back doors and took the package out. It was heavier than it looked, wrapped in brown paper and sealed with thick, black twine. Curiosity, stupidity, call it what you want. I was walking toward the house. The path to the porch was lined with smooth stones, each one carved with symbols I couldn't understand. Circles with slashes through them, triangles inside squares. They buzzed in my vision when I looked too long. The front door stood slightly ajar. The smell hit me first, something damp, like mold mixed with ash. I knocked. No answer. I placed the package gently on the porch, turned around, and froze. The forest. It was closer. The trees, which had been a good 50 feet from the house minutes ago, now stood only yards away, branches hanging low like arms reaching for the roof. And that's when I heard the whisper again. My name. But this time it wasn't coming from inside the house. It was coming from the woods. I turned slowly, eyes scanning the tree line. Something moved, tall, thin, and gliding between trunks with unnatural grace. I couldn't see its face, just a shadow shifting, watching. I bolted back to the van. The floor mat had worked, mostly. I threw it in the back, jumped in, and hit the gas. The tires groaned, spit mud, and then caught. The van lurched forward. But as I pulled away from the house, I saw something in the rearview mirror that made my blood run cold. The package I left on the porch? Gone. No sound. No footsteps. Just gone. I didn't stop driving until I reached the main road. I parked near the diner I'd passed on the way in, the only public building in town that looked even remotely open. The neon sign flickered "TESS" in sickly yellow light, buzzing softly against the afternoon hush. I needed answers. I needed someone, anyone, to explain what was happening. Inside, the diner was empty except for a man in a red flannel shirt, hunched over a mug of coffee at the counter. A waitress stood behind it, cleaning the same spot over and over with a rag that looked older than the counter itself. They both turned to me when I walked in. No smiles. "Coffee?" the waitress asked. I nodded, sat down 2 stools from the man in flannel. "I'm the new delivery guy," I offered. "Just came from Ash Hollow." The man's eyes met mine, deep brown, tired. "You went there?" "Yeah. Delivered a package. Something weird happened." He said nothing, just sipped his coffee. The waitress didn't move. Her eyes were still on me. "What is that place?" I asked. "What's going on in this town?" The man sighed, set down his mug. "Some places are forgotten for a reason," he said. "Ashwood wasn't always like this. Used to be a logging town. Honest work. Until the forest took something back." "Took what?" He looked at me, and his voice dropped. "A boy, 19, wandered in on a dare. They found his shoes 6 months later, up in a tree 20 feet off the ground. Nothing else." The waitress finally spoke. "We don't talk about Ash Hollow." "I saw something," I said. "Tall, pale, in the woods. It knew my name." The man's hand trembled slightly on the mug. "It remembers every name that enters the town. You delivered to 27. I nodded. "Then you'll start forgetting things soon." "What?" "Little things. Where you parked. What your mother's voice sounds like. It'll start slow. That's how it begins." I stood up, suddenly dizzy. "This is insane." He grabbed my arm, surprisingly strong. "If you want to leave, leave now. But don't take the main road." They watched the main road. "Use the old trail behind the church. Don't stop. Don't look back." My head was spinning. The room felt like it was tilting. "You okay?" the waitress asked, voice distant. I stumbled outside. The sun was low, almost sunset. The van was gone. I spun around, panicked. Had I parked in front of the diner? Yes, I was sure of it. But it wasn't there. No tire tracks. No oil stains. No sign it had ever existed. Then I heard it again. A knock. Not on glass. On wood. I turned. Package sat on the diner steps. Wrapped in brown paper. Black twine. The same one I left at 27 Ash Hollow Lane. Only this time it had a new note. "Do not run." I stared at the package, my breath frozen in my throat. A distant howl echoed through the trees. The sun dipped lower, and then I saw them. Figures, dozens of them, standing just at the edge of the forest. Too far to see clearly. Too still to be human. Waiting. Watching. Ashwood wasn't a town. It was a trap, and I had just stepped right into the middle of it. If I'm being honest, there's a moment when your brain stops trying to understand and starts trying to survive. When I saw those things at the edge of the woods, those still, tall figures watching me, I knew I was past the point of logic. My delivery van had vanished, the package had returned to me with a new warning, and the shadows of Ashwood were closing in. And the worst part? It was only sunset. I didn't touch the package. I backed away from it slowly, every muscle in my body coiled like a spring. The forest's edge, no more than 30 yards away, pulsed with unnatural movement. The figures weren't walking, not exactly. It was more like the forest itself was pushing them forward, tree limbs bending gently as they passed, welcoming them. I turned and sprinted down Main Street, shoes slapping the cracked pavement, breath tearing through my chest. The town felt deserted. Every curtain was shut. every door locked tight, as if everyone knew what was coming, and had known all along. The man in the diner had mentioned an old trail behind the church. That was my only shot. The church was an old white structure near the edge of town, its steeple slightly leaning like a crooked finger pointing skyward. I ran to the back, pushing through brambles and wild grass. There it was, a barely visible path, no wider than a foot trail, carved into the underbrush like it hadn't been walked in years. I didn't hesitate. The moment I stepped into the trail, the air changed, colder, denser, like something ancient had just noticed me. I pushed forward, low branches whipping my face, roots catching at my ankles. The sounds behind me faded, not because the figures had stopped following, but because the forest absorbed sound like a sponge. The trail twisted, always just out of reach of the main road. I saw it to my left through the trees once, clear, straight, safe-looking. But something in my gut told me if I left the trail, I wouldn't make it 10 steps before the forest took me. I don't know how long I ran. Could have been minutes. Could have been hours. Time in Ashwood wasn't playing by the usual rules. Eventually, I stumbled out of the trees into a clearing I hadn't expected. There was a cabin. Small. Run down. Smoke rising from the chimney. Again. Like 27 Ash Hollow. I should have run the other way. But I couldn't. My legs moved toward the door like they weren't mine anymore. I knocked. A voice answered. I didn't think you'd make it this far. The door opened. It was Ellie, the girl from the earlier delivery. But she looked different. Older. Pale. Like the woods had drained her. She stepped aside. They let you in. That means it's already started. I walked in. The inside of the cabin was a cluttered mess of candles. Symbols carved into the walls. Books stacked in chaotic piles. Jars of things I didn't want to look at too closely. What's happening? I asked, breathless. Why me? Ellie lit a candle. The flame flickered unnaturally. Ashwood's not on any map for a reason. It's a feeding ground. The town keeps up the illusion long enough to lure outsiders in. Drivers, hikers, the occasional lost traveler. The rest of us? We were born here. We serve. Serve who? She didn't answer right away, just looked at the candle's flame. There's something in the forest, she finally whispered. Old. Hungry. The people call it hollow kin. It doesn't have a form, not one it shows easily. It wears faces, whispers your name in voices you trust. It makes you forget who you are until you belong to it. My skin crawled. The man in the diner, he said I'd start forgetting things. You already have, she said quietly. You've been here 3 days. No, I shook my head violently. I came this morning. You think you did. But time warps here. You've been stuck in its loop. Delivering. Wandering. Dreaming. And every loop, it learns a little more about you. I felt sick. Like something inside me had been hollowed out. I don't believe this, I said. I'm getting out. I don't care what it takes. She nodded slowly. Then listen carefully. There's a way out, but you'll need to deliver something to the hollow kin. She walked over to a locked chest and pulled out a small black box. Inside was a photo of me, standing at 27 Ash Hollow. But in the photo, my face was blurred, smeared across the image like static. It needs to be given willingly, she said. Your image, your memory. If you give it up, it might let you go. But if you fail, she didn't need to finish. I took the box with trembling hands. You'll know where to go, she said. It's always watching. It'll find you. As I turned to leave, she called out one last thing. If it offers you something that looks like hope, don't take it. I stepped outside, the black box tucked under my arm. The trail behind the cabin had changed. It was wider now, straighter, like it was guiding me somewhere. I followed it. The air grew colder with each step. Not natural cold. The kind of cold you feel in your soul, like the warmth is being pulled out of you. Eventually, the trees opened to another clearing. No cabin this time. No house. Just a pit in the earth. Circular. Perfect. The ground around it was covered in the same symbols I'd seen on the stones back at 27 Ash Hollow. And standing around the pit, the figures. Closer now. I could see them better. Tall, slender, faces obscured by burlap masks, stitched over where their mouths should be. One of them stepped forward and held out a long gray hand. Waiting, I placed the black box in it. The pit began to glow. Faint, reddish light spiraled upward like smoke. I felt something move inside my head. A tug, like a memory being yanked free. I saw flashes, my mother's face, my childhood home, the inside of my van, my own reflection, and then darkness, total, just for a second. Then it was over. The figures backed away. The pit dimmed. I was alone. I staggered backward, unsure of what had just happened. I didn't even feel different, until I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. I didn't recognize the background photo. It was a woman smiling. I didn't know her. My hand shook. I opened my contacts. All blank. Photos. Random. Unfamiliar. Places I couldn't name. Faces I didn't remember. It had started. I stumbled out of the clearing, unsure where I was going. The trail had vanished. But the package, it was there again, sitting at my feet. Only now it had a new note. One more delivery. I looked up. The road in front of me curved toward the town. The sun somehow was rising again, like the day was resetting. And the van, my delivery van, was parked neatly on the road. Waiting. They say every job has its last delivery. But what if the job doesn't end? What if it just resets? I stood at the edge of that trail, staring at the van I thought I'd lost. My reflection blinked at me in the windshield like nothing had ever happened. Like I hadn't stood face to face with something older than memory. Like I hadn't just given away part of who I was. But the package sitting at my feet said otherwise. It had come back. Again. And this time, the note read, "One more delivery." The sun was rising, but wrong. Too orange, too fast. Shadows moved counter to the light. I felt like I was watching a play staged by something that didn't quite understand how time, or nature, was supposed to work. I picked up the package. The same black twine. Same brown paper. But this one was colder than before. It throbbed with a strange pulse when I held it, like it had a heartbeat of its own. I got into the van. It smelled faintly of pine and rot. The ignition clicked once, then turned over smoothly, like nothing had ever happened. But when I looked at the GPS, my stomach dropped. There was only one destination listed. No street name, no town, just a line of coordinates. I tapped the screen. It didn't respond. Then the voice came on. Proceed to the marked location. Not my GPS voice. It was mine. I drove. Ashwood blurred around me. Houses flickering in and out of existence like bad signal. People stood still in yards and porches, staring with blank, unreadable expressions. One child had no face at all, just skin stretched smooth where eyes and mouth should have been. I drove faster. The road narrowed until trees scraped both sides of the van. My mirrors snapped off, but I didn't stop. Finally, the trees parted. I was at the edge of a massive field, dead grass waving in a wind I couldn't feel. In the middle stood a structure, more ruin than building. It looked like it had once been a church, now collapsed in on itself, as if something had tried to push its way out from the inside. The GPS voice spoke again, my voice. "You have arrived." I stepped out of the van. The grass crunched beneath my boots, brittle like bones. As I approached the ruined church, a low hum began in my ears. Not sound, pressure. Like my skull was being squeezed from the inside. The package felt heavier with each step. I pushed open what was left of the church doors. Inside, pews were shattered. Candles burned with no flame. The altar at the far end had been split in two. Behind it was a hole in the wall, black and seething. Waiting. And beside the altar stood a figure. It wore my face. But not exactly. The skin was wrong, too tight. The eyes didn't blink. The smile was held open by something underneath. It spoke. "You're almost free." Its voice was a blend of mine and something deeper, like my voice had been fed through a dying animal and echoed back. I didn't respond. I held out the package. The figure shook its head. "No. You must place it where it began." I stared. Where it began? Pointed toward the altar, toward the black opening behind it. toward the hollow. I hesitated. Every instinct screamed at me not to go near it. Then I remembered Ellie's words. If it offers hope, don't take it. So this wasn't the end. This was another loop. A deeper trap. I turned away from the altar. The figure snarled. You're breaking the rules. Maybe they need to be broken. I ran. The church trembled. The hum became a roar. The ground cracked beneath me. Outside, the trees were moving, not in the wind, but walking, uprooting themselves. Bent, gnarled things dragging roots like claws across the soil. They were circling. But I saw it. A gap. A sliver of road leading past the field and up a hill. The van was gone. But I didn't need it now. I ran. Up the hill. Faster. Behind me, the ground collapsed into the field. Screams, hundreds of them, rose from the soil like steam. The further I ran, the clearer things became. The hum dulled. The sky lightened. And then, at the top of the hill, I saw a house. Not like the others in Ashwood. This one was modern. Blue shutters. Well-kept lawn. It looked normal. And standing in the doorway, Ellie, younger, smiling. Come inside, she said softly. You made it. I hesitated. This felt too clean, too perfect. Where am I? I asked. Home, she replied. You were never meant to stay. You passed the test. I looked down. The package was gone. So was the field. The ruined church. Everything behind me had vanished into rolling hills and sunlight. Maybe I'd done it. Maybe I'd actually escaped. I stepped forward. The porch creaked under my weight. I reached the door. Ellie stepped aside to let me in. And that's when I saw it. The mirror in the hallway. My reflection was gone. Not blurred. Not shadowed. Just gone. I didn't go inside. I backed off the porch slowly, heart pounding in my chest like it was trying to warn me. Ellie's face began to shift. The skin sagged. Her smile widened unnaturally. The eyes melted into inky voids. You almost made it, she said. Her voice now layered with hundreds of others. The perfect house crumbled like ash. And beneath it, more forest, more hollow. A new trail appeared behind me, and a familiar package sat at my feet. The note now read, Final delivery, or stay forever. I bent down and picked it up. Ashwood wasn't letting me go. Not yet. This wasn't just another delivery. It was the delivery. The one that decides if you go home, or if you become part of the route. The house, the girl, the light. All illusions. Just more bait from the Hollokin. And now, the final package sat in my hands. Cold, quiet, and somehow heavier than before. It didn't pulse anymore. It waited. The note was clear. Final delivery, or stay forever. And something deep inside told me there wouldn't be a second chance. I didn't run this time. I didn't panic. I followed the trail. It wound tighter than before. Steeper hills, deeper shadows, the forest pressing in like it was trying to swallow me whole. But I kept walking, package tucked under one arm like it was made of lead. That voice, the one that sounded like mine, whispered through the trees again. Almost there, but I didn't answer. I knew now the Hollokin wore familiarity like a mask. It showed you what you wanted, home, safety, peace, then made you hand over everything that made you human. It wasn't after blood. It was after memory, identity, name. And piece by piece, I had been giving it away. The trail ended at the edge of a ravine, massive and deep, its walls slick with some kind of black moss. At the bottom, half buried in earth and shadow, was a door. An ordinary door, wooden, blue, just like the front door of my childhood home. This was it, the final delivery point. I descended carefully, every step echoing off stone like it was announcing me to something ancient. The package seemed to grow colder the closer I got. My fingers numbed around it. When I reached the bottom, I stared at the door. There was a mailbox next to it. Rusted, leaning slightly. The nameplate had no name. Just one word scratched in violently. Remember. I opened the box and slid the package inside. Nothing happened. For a moment, I just stood there, expecting light, a sound, anything. But the silence was worse. I turned to climb back up, and the door creaked open. From the other side came a voice. Not mine, not the Holokin's. My mother's. Soft, gentle, calling my name like she used to when I was little. Time to come home, sweetheart. I froze. Behind me the forest groaned. The walls of the ravine shimmered. And then I remembered. My mother died 5 years ago, buried in a city 2 states away. This wasn't her. This was the final trick. The Holokin knew it couldn't take me by force. It needed me to walk through willingly. So it used the one voice I'd follow without question. I took a step back from the door. No, I said out loud. Not this time. The voice changed. It warped, deepened, grew monstrous. The door screamed. Not the hinges, the wood itself. Like something alive had been nailed together and was now being torn open from the inside. I turned and ran. The ravine shook. Roots lashed out from the walls like tentacles, trying to catch my ankles. One wrapped around my leg, and for a moment I was dragged back toward the door. The world blurred. The trees, the rocks, the sky smeared together like a spinning painting. And just before I was pulled into the threshold, I reached into my jacket pocket and found a lighter. Ellie's lighter. She'd slipped it into my coat back at the cabin. Without saying a word, I flicked it on. The flame roared, blue, bright, and impossibly hot. The root around my leg recoiled instantly. I dropped the flame onto the mossy floor of the ravine, and the world caught fire. Not real fire, memory fire. The trees didn't burn. They dissolved into images. My childhood room, my first bike, my father teaching me how to drive. Every piece of me the Holokin had tried to consume, burning itself free. I scrambled up the ravine as the door below screamed in agony, splinters flying like shrapnel. And when I reached the top, the town was gone. No Ashwood, no forest, just an empty road. My van, parked neatly on the shoulder, keys in the ignition. I opened the door, half expecting something monstrous inside. But there was nothing, just a delivery schedule. All blank, except for one line. You're done. I drove. For hours. Maybe days. I didn't stop until I saw gas stations I recognized. Towns with real names. Cell signal returning like a long-lost friend. I checked my reflection in the rearview mirror every few minutes, just to be sure I was still there. And I was tired, haunted. But me. Weeks passed. I quit the job, moved cities, burned the uniform, but I still dream about a package I never opened. A girl with no age and eyes full of secrets, and a door that's still waiting for me, just beneath the surface of somewhere that shouldn't exist. Sometimes I'll wake in the middle of the night and swear I hear something at the front door. A knock, just one, followed by silence. And when I check, there's nothing there, just a single box, wrapped in brown paper,